Hello, my name is Lydia Stetson, and you're watching Connecting Voices, a TV show dedicated to producing news on social justice issues for youth. Today we're going to talk about the overlook of the issue of Asian American bullying, more so the bullying of Asian Americans. And we have our guests, Allison Rowe-Park, writer from The Race Files, Ju Han, the program and communications manager, and Joanne Yu, executive director of the Asian American Federation. Thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you for having us.
So to start off the show, I'd like to read a quote from an article from IB Times discussing this issue, and it says, 62% of Asian American students surveyed reported being bullied once or twice a month, while 18.1% of whites face similar taunting. In the classroom, 54% of Asian American teens reported being bullied, compared with 31.3% of white students, 34.3% of Hispanic teens, and 38% of their African American peers. So I just wanted to say that quote to show our viewers that this issue is quite real, but often overlooked. So could you just tell me your reactions to this quote?
Sure. Can we start?
Sure.
I do actually believe the numbers are higher as well for cyberbullying, because I think that this happens both in person in the classroom and also in online spaces, right? So I am not surprised. I wasn't surprised when I heard it for various reasons. And we're going to get to some of that, I think, during this interview around media representations and things like that. But I definitely experienced race-based bullying growing up. And I think in addition to that, there's also the gender dynamic on top of that, how Asian boys and Asian girls might be bullied in a different way. So I definitely wasn't surprised. And I think there's a lot of different structural issues that in play here, as well as how educators deal with the issue, how administrators deal with it, and how mental health professionals deal with Asian American youth as well.
Absolutely. I agree with Allison. I think the numbers are actually much higher. I think 60% seems a little low for me. With my own experience, with my own siblings and my friends, we talk about all the times that we've all been personally bullied or have been harassed, and so I feel like this might be a number that kids can it's documented that statistically, but I think the reality is that we've all experienced this in one form or another.
And we were just, Joanne and I, we were talking about this yesterday. We were just talking about how, her experience when she was in high school and college, and my experiences, and now, like, the fact that maybe things have not changed or have gotten worse, despite, these, this image of the kids being successful, Asian kids are all right, clearly they're not. And there's not enough intervention being done at a school level, community level, maybe parents not knowing what their options are to be able to prevent something that is easily preventable.
Could you guys tell us a little bit about your own personal experiences, just to show our viewers that it is a reality?
Sure. I'll share first. So I grew up not in New York. I think we were one of the very first Asian families in our school district, so there wasn't even an ESL program. So when you're a new kid and you don't look like anybody else and you don't speak the language, there's certainly, I just remember all the taunts. I asked my sisters, because they had a longer assimilation period before they started school, and I said, I'm going to get to talk about bullying. What did you ever experience? And they said, absolutely. And my sisters were the jocks. They were the drama kids. One of my sisters was a cheerleader, so I thought surely they probably didn't have to experience this as much as I have. But they said, yeah, we'd walk into classrooms and people would make comments about being an Asian kid all the time. We had a handful of Asian kids in high school, a handful of Asian kids in college. And the challenge is that because we are new to this country, as Ju mentioned, as a kid, when you process that, who do you complain to? Your parents aren't necessarily equipped to help you to deal with that. The administration isn't equipped to deal with that. And I think now, more than ever, with all the social media, it certainly has been amped up. And it's really tragic that, I think, wow, all the stuff that I experienced as a kid, it's still going on. Surely this is what we have not, our work has not evolved enough to make sure that the kids are exempt from some of this stuff.
And for myself, I didn't directly experience. I think more microaggressions on my part, but I did witness my brother being bullied pretty badly in middle school and high school, and I think that really affected our family. Clearly, him, his mental health, emotional health, social development, and my parents didn't know how to deal with it. They had limited English proficiency, so he was kind of had to deal with it on his own. He didn't really know how to deal with it because when you're a kid, what coping skills do you know? And witnessing that over the years, I think really impacted me. I just realized, in high school, in college, my feeling of very, bystander, the effects of being a bystander to bullying is also, I think, just as detrimental, and I think also really fueled the direction that I, decided to go in terms of my work too. So.
I heard you say because we're new to this country, and I actually want to push back on that because I actually don't. I mean, Asian people have been in the U.S. before the U.S. was America, before it was the United States of America, and I mean, our own history. I remember having kids, and I grew up actually mostly around Latinos and African Americans, right? So I grew up around other people of color, and I think a lot of the way that we look at bullying is in a very white context.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of it is about internalized racism as well. But I remember hearing kids, I was at a boxing match a couple of years ago, and this little kid just ran up to me at the soda machine and was like, ching chong, ching chong. And I was like, that's exactly what some little kid did to me when I was his age, right? So clearly some intervention is not happening across generation. And I think some of it is because we have these very durable images that are in the media that people can rely on, and they really haven't changed. Maybe it's like a different version of it, and it looks different. And just to pan out of the classroom, I mean, bullying outside of the classroom can take many forms, right? It can take the form for young girls as street harassment, right? There's just many variations of it. What your physical ability, how that plays into how that gets racialized as well. In these interpersonal interactions, so yeah.
So do you guys feel like this issue is, like, do people know about it? And if they do, then how come they don't talk about it? And if they don't, why do you think they don't know about it?
I think in terms of mainstream culture and media, I don't think there's really, I think it's a surprise to most people because of this whole model minority myth. And I think certainly, like, seeing it for me actually in statistics was a little surprising because even though you yourself, from your family perspective, your friends, you do feel like at least half the people that you know have been bullied or have witnessed it, it is a little disconcerting to think that, nationwide this is, has been a problem. So, language access is one thing, right? The underreporting because, kids will not report it, right? They don't know who to go to. Parents will not advocate for their kids because they're at work, they're busy, they don't know what what the school processes are. And also, I just also think about this idea of if we forget about it, they don't know what the impact is long-term wise. So they think if we forget about it and kids just focus on, their studies or whatnot being successful, it should go away. So I think it's just lack of knowledge of how to deal with it.
So right now I want us to watch a short clip from an interview from the web series Angry Asian Man, Angry Asian America, that is a part of ISA TV. It was aired last year in April, and it discusses some of the issues we're going to talk about.
All right, guys, so our first topic, our angry story of the week, is about bullying. Asian Americans getting bullied, actually. So do you guys know that more than half of all Asian American teens say that they've been bullied in school? The statistic's a couple of years old, but an infographic's been circulating last week compared to other ethnic groups, right? So white, Latino, black, those report about 31, 34, 38%, whereas Asian Americans say 54% have been bullied, right? So that's staggering, the difference is staggering. Yeah, let me just throw it out there, like, what do you guys feel, why is this happening? What are the reasons why Asians might be targeted for bullying in schools?
I mean, my thoughts on it is that I don't think a lot of the other kids are familiar with Asian culture. And when you're different, you kind of get like poked fun at, you know what I mean? And that comes down to like, we always talk about this Asian representation in the media and the lack of that. And you look at the figures of Asian American actors and stuff in these movies and TV roles, and they're not the coolest roles, you know what I'm saying? I think we need, cooler figures, and familiarize the youth with Asian Americans.
I don't know, well, see, for me it was different. I grew up in a school where the minority was the majority, and like the minority for my school was was white. Like they bussed in white people to my school.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in San Diego, but like southeast San Diego.
Okay.
And so for me, I didn't really encounter much Asian bullying, but what I did encounter was Asian American bullying towards Asians, like that came.
Fobbier, fresh
Well.
off the boat ones.
So like a lot of like my friends, not specifically my friends, but Asian Americans, they would bully like the new kids that would come in straight from the Philippines or Asia, and that was really sad.
Asian on Asian bullying.
Yeah, that's even worse to me.
Yellow on yellow hate, man.
Damn. Well, I hear, like, through my blog, I hear about a lot of people who, I mean, I think we're kind of an exception in terms of the Asian American community, but I hear from a lot of people who are like, they're the only Asian at their school. They're the only ones who, you know, like they get made fun of all the time because of their ethnicity. And it comes down to a lot of factors, but one of them, a major one, is just like, there's a certain foreignness that's associated with the Asianness, and then you're dehumanized because of that, right? And you know, people are bullies. They're always gonna pick on just like whatever they can find that's different. But then there's like this element of just extra, like if you're the only one, you know, you feel so isolated, you know what I mean? What advice would you guys have for somebody who is like sort of like on the playground? Like we're talking about teens, we're talking about school kids,
Right.
having to deal with this every day. They're feeling pretty isolated. I mean, do you guys have any advice maybe for the, you know, for the kids who are kind of like, you know, in the thick of it?
I don't know, I mean, I feel like it's easier said than done. We could easily tell them to embrace being an individual, being different or whatnot, but like until you're at, you know, in their place, experiencing what they're experiencing, it's hard for me to even just
Yeah.
tell them that.
It feels like the adult answer to give them.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
yo, come on, be unique. I mean, be happy. You're like a unicorn. Nah. But I think it goes down to like education. You know, like the teachers and adults. Like, you know,
It's the teachers.
they gotta pull up pictures of dumbfounded. Like, look at this motherfucker. Ill as
I gotta say, when I went to school in a pretty white, small liberal arts school on the East Coast, I met Asians that weren't from Southern California like me, and they were like, oh my God, look at you. You're like, you're kind of a loud Asian. You can like, you have your opinions. Like, where did you come from? It was like, they were like starving for just like another person that looked like me.
It's our culture too. We were brought up in a way to like kind of respect your elders, hold back, don't speak unless you're spoken to, and so a lot of those kids take that into like how they are in school, and so they take all the bullying and whatnot because they don't feel like they can't defend themselves because it's not how they were brought up.
I think we got to break out of that. I mean, my advice to
for
kids would be
sure.
like, yo, if something's going down, like speak up, stand up, say something, you know? People bully others because they think that they're not going to fight back.
Yeah.
Basically,
Yeah.
it makes you an easy target. And so, you know, you have to stand up. Like, I feel like the one thing that us Asians are kind of known for in a shitty way, it's like, we're going to be the passive ones, we're going to sit
Yeah.
look down and take it, you know? And I feel like that needs to stop, you know? That stereotype needs to die.
Let's go.
So could you guys talk about your reactions, maybe like your challenge, how you want to critique the video or praise it or anything, kind of thoughts, immediate?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on it. I have a lot of respect for all the folks who are on the video, and I think they all made some good points. I do want to point to the use of this term Asian culture, right? I think, for one, I don't really, like, what is Asian? I think that's a really important question to ask at first. Are you talking about people whose families have been in the United States for 4 or 5 generations? Are you talking about adoptees who grew up with people of other ethnicities? Are you talking about people who are from the 50 plus countries that comprise the Asia Pacific? I think we really loosely throw around this word Asian, and I think it undercuts the fact that race is a socially constructed thing, right? Race is something that's a category that's created to lump together a really large group of people who are actually very different from one another. And I think that lends itself to the idea of a singular Asian culture, right? Culture changes, right? Whatever white American culture as we know it today is not the same as it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 30 years ago. So I think particularly when it comes to any issue dealing with Asians, we're very quick to kind of look at Asian culture as a culprit, as the reason that things happen. And I think that that's a form of victim blaming that really shouldn't be happening, especially when we're talking about some really grave issues that Asian American youth and Pacific Islander youth are facing. So that's kind of my main thesis when I'm watching that video. And the experiences of this so-called like Asian on Asian bullying, that's called internalized racism, right? The same lens through which those Asian American kids might be looking at recent immigrant youth or maybe the same, that they're trying to disassociate themselves from those sorts of the stigma and the markers of being the new kid, you know, the new weird kid with the food that smells weird, you know. So those are my initial thoughts.
But I also feel like the way we are physically also makes us readily identified to be bullied. I have friends that, when I get together with my friends, and I have friends who've been here for many, many generations, and we still get the question of, your English is really good, where are you really from, right? And so why we're always seen as the other, and I think that's a huge challenge that, I have friends here who've been here, their families have been here for 4 or 5 generations, and we say, well, we've been here, we are Americans, but yet there's always this foreignness to Asian Americans. I think that's a tremendous disservice to our community. And I've heard this from some of our member agencies who work with youth, that the immigrant youth who are bullied, then in turn bully the new kids who come. And so it gets perpetuated because they say, well, I had to experience it, so therefore now I've been here a couple years, so now there's some new kids coming in and I know exactly what they're going through. And so instead of helping them to navigate this, the schools, society, they then become the bullies.
And I think that when the conversation is always sort of about, reducing it to the essentialization of what it means to be Asian American, it is hard to look at how complex and diverse the Asian American experience is, because you're always forced to answer the same question of, where you're from, the perpetual foreigner. Right. So I think that, it's a mix of both of what you're saying, that Joanne's saying that our physical appearance clearly shows that we look different from what is considered the norm, so that, it's hard to bring in these other conversations about, but I don't, these Asian American experiences are not necessarily my own, but you're forced to have to kind of contend with that, right? Because that's what, media shows, that's what people are always kind of asking you about. So I think it's a mix of both, yeah.
I guess recently there has been more in pop culture, more divergences to the stereotypes of Asian Americans, specifically Asian American males, such as the guy in the video Dumbfound Dead, and then also Eddie Quang. They both sort of are showing this other side to the typical Asian American males as other people view it as. So I wanted us to watch a video just so our viewers could see what this example is.
The two things people always make fun of me for is you're fat and you think you're black. And I was always very aware that I'm not black. It's very strange in America that if you're interested in certain things, you're immediately branded black or white. But what is it to be Asian? What do you expect me to do? If I'm Asian, then I'm just good at math and good with chopsticks and eat Chinese food. I mean, when brothers in Harlem like Kung Fu, it's never like, oh, you think you're Chinese. It's like, no, you like Kung Fu. I love the idea of America. America is the best show running in the world right now. I believe in it. I don't think it's ever fully fulfilled its promise or its ideals, but I genuinely think one day it will.
We left everything we know to come to a place where we know nothing and where the humidity is not good for my hair.
There's always white people tweeting me saying, this is so offensive, this is a racist show. And I was like, I don't know if you know any of us, because it's not racist. It's really weird when dominant culture comes to tell you what to be mad about. Don't tell me what needs to be offensive to me. I called the book Fresh Off the Boat because I identify more with my parents' generation and our generation of overseas Chinese than anything else. Because we have no home. We are literally fresh off the boat.
I always grew up playing ball with my dad. He don't know it right now, but he about to get balled on.
Just because I'm Asian doesn't mean I can speak about everything in Asian America. I can only speak about the things I know. We need to hold the power to define ourselves. I want Asians in rollerblades, I want Asians in mountains, I want Asians flying planes, and I want Asians driving garbage trucks. It's just I want us to be viewed as whole people, not as people who can only do this or only do that. These conversations should be held in a public forum so that the rest of the country can learn and grow alongside of us.
So yeah, like Allison was saying, so Eddie Huang is also like, the way his image is pretty controversial. Like he has a restaurant in New York, and like some of his dishes, like the names of it, such as like poker face prawns or concubine cucumbers, like his way of trying to, I guess, diverge from that narrative of the Asian American male is sort of controversial. And one of our guests from our previous show, Jen Fang, founder of Reappropriate.co blog, she actually talked about it in one of her blog posts. So I want to read that really quick. This exaggerated misogyny as a response to mainstream Asian American emasculation is all too familiar. Eddie's early menu only exemplifies the uncaring, hip-hop caricatured sexism that has continued to define his public persona. The implicit assertion is that because he is a man of color, his empowering project of challenging anti-Asian stereotypes justifies his simultaneous gendered mistreatment of others. So what do you guys think of Ms. Fang's comment? Do you agree?
I mean, naming those dishes, it's offensive as a woman, and I think it goes back to when we talk about the bullying between, and the stereotypes of Asian boys and men versus women and girls. Seeing this, it's not okay.
I'll let you.
Yeah.
You want me to go first?
Sure, go ahead.
I think Jen is brilliant and fierce, and generally I would just say like ditto to anything that Jen says. She's right on. I mean, the few good points that Eddie made, his commentary on Asianness and Americanness in the time clip that we just saw. One of the points that he made was something that sounded like self-determination, right? Which was like kind of the thing that drove all of the political liberation movements of the 70s. So if he is talking about self-determination, and this is his idea of self-determining what it is to be Asian, and it completely excludes me, and it completely excludes over 50% of the people who might identify as Asian, I have a problem with that. He's using whatever power he's gotten in this process, whether as a restaurateur, as a commentator, now as a celebrity writer. That's not cool to use that power and then try to elevate yourself by stepping on other people, right? Which includes his mom, which includes his sister, right? So I definitely have problems with that. I think that a really fundamental thing to think about is that the idea of masculinity and Asian masculinity, the kind of demasculinization of Asian men that we hear a lot about in our spaces, relies on the subjugation of Asian women, right? If you are saying that you want to be a man, then what does it mean to be an Asian woman, right? If you being masculine means writing a bunch of misogynistic and sexist food names on your menu, I am not interested in being your kind of Asian, and I think that's the bottom line. And he borrows from whatever his notion of Black culture is and Black vernacular and swagger to kind of to put down women of color, whether it's Asian women in the menu or if it's Black Girl Dangerous. He had this whole exchange with a Black blogger, Black feminist blogger. I'm not down with any of that.
So how can, I guess, males break away from this narrative without putting down women through the process?
Well, first they need to remember they have mothers. I mean, I think that's the, I often think, do you want your mom to, really? Would you say this about how would you feel if somebody said this about your mom, grandmother, sister, aunt, right? All the females in your life. And I think it's not about so much about, and it's not about swagger. It really is about seeing people for who they are and not, basing your opinions and comments on gender or popular stereotypes or popular beliefs. I think, you have to, whenever, before you say something, you have to think about like how does this get translated? There's a lot of education to be done, certainly, but.
I think, in a weird way, it's also kind of a form of bullying, this dichotomy of as an Asian male, I have to be closer to the norm than the Asian female, right? So I'm, being male means strong, being female means weak, good versus bad. So, it's also, we keep talking about this, but creating spaces and forums, whether on Twitter, online, or in person, to be able to deconstruct what do we mean when we say what it means to be a male or female? Really, can we really categorize ourselves in these qualities, right? Like, we need to deconstruct, and why people tend to deflect maybe these conversations is like, what's the uncomfortable discomfort that they're trying to avoid revealing? But, I think that's the challenge, right? And I think that when I think Asian youth need more mentors and role models and people, different people being out there, not really neatly fitting into these categories of what it means to be male and female, or male versus female, and that you could be sort of a complex human being without being, strong versus, weak and whatnot. And sort of, as a plug, but really wanting to share these resources, the Asian American Federation is trying to do a lot of work around creating, raising awareness of these issues that impact Asian Americans and mental health in whatever way. So we had a bullying panel. And there are also, very complex topics around, when you're male, female, what that looks like and how you get treated differently. We like to talk about microaggressions. So it's also, there are not just us, but other community organizations out there that really do a lot of work around this. And I think that if youth, sometimes it's embarrassing or shameful, and if you don't feel like you have resources at school, reach out and see if there's a community organization that, has a youth program where you could talk about some of these things and be able to talk to adults who have experience and can guide you through that. And I think not being so isolated is a huge step towards resolving some of the impact that happens.
Thank you. So do you guys have any final comments?
Organize your communities. There's power in numbers, and it's the best way to kind of get to know each other as human beings and change the conditions of your life, whether it's bullying, whether it's housing issues, whether it's healthcare issues or sex ed, whatever the issues are. Talk to one another, get together, do something.
And I think that, youth, they're the ones who know what's happening in schools, what's really affecting their generation, their friends. So link up with other people who have those common interests. Activism doesn't look always like you're picketing the line, right? It might be something that you rally kids at your school. That's what we did, right? And kind of confronting injustices that you see around you. So it starts small scale, but it could really just do a lot in terms of your community, improving your community as a whole, not just for Asian Americans, I think all kids.
And as Asian Americans, I think it's important for us to realize, allies come in all shapes and sizes and colors and economic levels. It's not just Asians it's not just the Asians who will come to your aid. I think there's lots of supports out there. A lot of people want you to succeed. Seek those allies out. Seek those support systems out, and really educate yourself and empower yourself.
Thank you so much. My name is Lydia Stetson, and you're watching Connecting Voices. Stay tuned.